We've got a great guest now. Joining us is Josh Stein, the Attorney General of North Carolina, who's also our candidate for governor. Josh, welcome.
Thanks, Simon. Great to be with you and Tara.
So, the big story, obviously, is Helene and the recovery efforts. Can you give us an update on how things are going?
It's going to be a long haul, and we hope folks have the endurance to stick with it. Folks from the outside, I have no doubt that the folks in Western North Carolina will have the endurance. It's incredible to watch neighbor helping neighbor, folks coming together and looking out for each other, and they have to. Many communities today, what are we, nearly 2 weeks later, they still don't have power and they don't have water. It's really hard living, but folks are looking out for each other. They're taking care of each other. I was in Black Mountain last week, and the local hotel there, the Monte Vista Hotel, had converted itself into a food distribution center, and they were feeding the entire community. And it was just incredibly uplifting to see it firsthand. The stories of first responders saving lives, doing swift boat rescues, getting people off their roofs, just incredibly moving and inspiring. And then tremendous stories of heartbreak. The fire chief in Black Mountain told me about how a buddy of his up the mountain lost his entire family, his parents, his wife, his children, a mudslide took out. And so there is going to be incredible pain and families. We don't know how many hundreds of people are dead yet. It's going to take a little while to do all that work. You have the people helping people. You have the nonprofits who act quickly and do incredible work. I was in Marion, and the Baptist men were feeding people at a rate I've never seen before. Just boom, 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 as the cars wound their way through the massive parking lot. Because folks don't have refrigeration. They don't have stoves. They don't have any way to feed themselves. And then you have local governments rising to meet the moment. And then the state government has been there. Emergency management with our State Department of Public Safety is coordinating all of the response and doing a remarkable job. DOT had well over 1,000 people within days up there clearing roads so that the power crews could come in to repair the lines, so that the phone companies could come in and lay more cable. It's just been this massive, massive undertaking. And the federal government has been a strong partner. Within days, the president announced that he was going to give a 100% reimbursement rate to the state of North Carolina for our clearing efforts, which just takes huge relief off of our state budgets. We're going to need the federal government to continue to step up. FEMA has been tremendous. Administrator Criswell has been on the ground. She was here nonstop for a week. I assume she's now in Florida with the hurricane coming there now, but she's been an incredible partner. And those folks are out in the community giving emergency relief to people. Everybody can get $750 like that to help with daily expenses, whether you need new clothes, new toothbrush, whatever you need. They're going to be there for the long haul to give people the relief and loans that will help them get back on their feet. U.S. Department of Defense has deployed people from the 101st and people from the 82nd, and they're there on the ground helping to clear roads. It really has been a positive story of all aspects of our society, from the government, federal, state, and local, to the nonprofits and the private corporations. I was in Charlotte yesterday recognizing NASCAR and Food Lion and the Carolina Panthers. I mean, just those entities alone did something like $8 million within the first couple of days to buy relief for folks. So there are a lot of positive stories, and sadly, there are those who are trying to exploit it for political gain.
Attorney General, thank you for being here. And that's exactly what I wanted to ask you about, because in extreme weather disasters, that is one of those moments that you actually really do see everyone come together. I always think about that Mr. Rogers quote that makes its way around the internet after any crisis or disaster about looking for the helpers. And you just talked about all of them from the local, state, and federal level and nonprofits. Yet something that we've seen, certainly our reporters on the ground at Cardinal and Piner, our newsroom in the state, was an extraordinary and fast movement of disinformation and misinformation about relief efforts. And as a accidental student of right-wing disinformation and Trump's playbook in particular, obviously we are in a really, really, really close election year, and your state plays a really, really important role. It could be the state that the outcome hinges on. And so I'm curious, talk a little bit, without amplifying the disinformation, which we know is never a good practice, but what that has been like to have to counter on top of all of the actual life-saving relief efforts on the ground, and why you think this moved so quickly in particular, given this moment politically as well.
Yeah, the cynicism behind the disinformation is really painful. I have a buddy up in Avery County. They don't have internet. They barely have cell service. You have to go to specific locations. Incredibly hard to communicate. They don't have power. The roads are washed out. Entire communities are gone, homes and the people who lived in them. And so they're just trying to survive day to day. And he said, even without the ability to get information, the disinformation and rumors have spread like wildfire. And so he's like, I don't know how it happens, but it just happens because I think it confirms people's worst fears that the government isn't there to help them, but it is there to harm them. And they were saying that if you sign up for FEMA, they're going to take your property. Well, there's nothing you can do more to dissuade somebody to sign a piece of paper that can get them dollars in their pockets today to help them and their family than to say that your property is going to be at risk if you do that. And it's just devastating because these folks are entitled to that help as Americans by law. And we want them to get what they are entitled to because it will help them. It will help them. It will help their families. For them to not seek what they're entitled to because someone thinks that they get political gain out of feeding people's fear of others, it's just outrageous. It's outrageous. So folks are doing everything we can to counter it. You counter it with truth to the extent you can, to hoping that they can hear it. The Department of Public Safety has a fact versus fiction section on their webpage. They never needed that before, but they do today. So it's just a matter of trying to get out as much information that's helpful and real to counter the falsehoods. But it's a difficult battle, I have to be honest with you.
Yeah, and we know that most of it has been coming from right-wing media and from the Republican presidential candidate Trump himself, out of his mouth, saying a lot of things to try to shape a narrative both in North Carolina, Georgia, and nationally around this. I was really heartened, though, to see, and Cardinal Pine covered it, that's how I saw it, but that Senator Tom Tillis, a Republican, came out and sort of told those folks to stand down. And I think that's really important because trusted messengers from communities that might be more targeted or susceptible to hearing that disinformation, hearing it from a Republican matters. Would you agree?
Representative Chuck Edwards, who's the congressman who represents that whole western tip of North Carolina, very conservative guy, has a pretty hot post that point by point refutes the nonsense that people are spewing because he knows these are his people and he knows that these resources can help his communities recover. So he's angry too.
Yeah, and I think just commenting on this, I think this has been for the national community of people who work on these matters. This has been a before and after moment. I think that not only are they going to have to pre-position, trucks and supplies, but they're going to have to pre-position truth, before all of these things to sort of help soften the information ground, not just and it's just a whole different way of having to think about this.
I want to underscore that a bit because the thing we think about a lot at Courier is how a lot of reporters, even where they exist locally, as we know there aren't so many, they're not as incentivized to talk about the good that government does all the time. And I think there's like a positive opportunity and outcome here because this is one of those moments where government does and can step up and really has, especially in this moment. And so there might be a silver lining there of sorts where there is more presence and proactive communication about the efforts that state, local, and federal government do play to help people recover and rebuild.
There's a lot of stories that need to be told, but there also is a lot of work that needs to be done. And we're going to need the federal government to pass massive emergency relief bills. I mean, the extent of devastation to our roads, both state and federal roads, it's just impossible to understand. Like rivers reformed, they went outside their banks and now have a new shape. And that shape didn't care that there was a road that went along the river. And so every couple hundred yards, that road is washed out. And to rebuild these roads are going to take years and it's going to take billions of dollars.
And so let's get to the other thing that's happening, which is there's an election happening in North Carolina. Josh, you have an opponent, Mark Robinson, who's been in the news a little bit recently. How are things going?
I feel good about our race. my head is down and I'm running hard, but I like where we are. I like the fact that we've been around the state more times than I can count. Felt like I did it all yesterday included. People are responding to our vision, which is fundamentally positive, forward looking, and welcoming. It's about fighting for everybody, creating opportunity for everybody, tapping everybody's potential for our collective good interest. That is what people want. They want somebody who's focused on issues that matter in their lives, whether it's good public schools and strong teacher pay. The Republican legislature has dropped North Carolina to the bottom in per pupil investment. It's about having an economy that works for everybody, safe neighborhoods where parents don't have to worry about their kids playing after school. And it's about our personal freedoms being protected. A woman's right to choose is truly on the ballot in November here in North Carolina. And voters are embracing that vision. And the guy I'm running against, who has been in the news a lot. But here's the thing about that whole CNN story is everyone who'd paid any attention to this guy before that CNN story hit knew he was fundamentally unfit for any public office, let alone to be the governor of North Carolina. And so all it did, I told my wife about the story when it came out, and she said, we didn't learn anything new. I mean, there's nothing new in there. We knew about his predilections. We knew that he glorified Nazis. We knew he didn't like Jewish people. We knew these things. And I said, yes, it's true. And we knew he disrespected women. We knew he glorified violence. Just totally, totally unfit. And I'm really encouraged. We want this to be a great year for Democrats in North Carolina, up and down the ballot. Obviously, we want Vice President Harris to win North Carolina, because if she does, I believe she will be the president. There's really not a path to the presidency for Trump without North Carolina and the red column. So we're working hard on that. But we have an incredible slate of council of state candidates. And the contrast may be less media salacious as my opponent, but the contrast in the character and the quality of the candidates is amazing. I mean, the Democrats have this great slate of candidate, and the Republicans have put forward this most extreme slate I've ever seen. Superintendent of public instruction, the attorney general, lieutenant governor, it's just up and down. We've got to break the supermajority. We're only one vote shy in each chamber. So we have our work cut out for us over the next 28 days, but we're prepared to do it, and grateful for every bit of help that you all and folks around the country have done to support us. If folks want to keep helping, joshstein.org, we will put those resources to good use to try to make this a great year for Democrats up and down the ballot.
And it really is turnout game in North Carolina. We know you guys are a true battleground, and also voters there have a history of a little bit of an independent streak or ticket splitting, right? You've had a Democratic governor, but Trump won the state by, I think, 77,000 or so votes in 2020. Close, but not as close as some of the other battlegrounds, but obviously very close. How are you feeling about turnout, and especially in the aftermath of the storm and the recovery efforts?
I had an interesting conversation with a guy in Mecklenburg. Mecklenburg is a critical bellwether county. It's the second most populous county to Wake County, but it has more Democrats than any other county. And yet in 2022, the number of Democrats who turned out in Mecklenburg versus Wake, that's Charlotte versus Raleigh, substantially less, something like 70, 80,000 fewer votes out of Mecklenburg than Wake, even though there are more Democrats. So everyone's been focused on trying to get Mecklenburg excited about voting in the election. And I talked to a guy who's an independent yesterday, lives in a suburban neighborhood of Charlotte, just sort of your standard suburban, middle of the road kind of community. He said he's had 3 or 4 Democratic door knocks this cycle and not a single one from a Republican. And that completely meshes with my perception of what's going on around the state, is that we have a couple hundred paid canvassers through the coordinated campaign, great alignment. You know, Anderson Clayton, our great state party chair, working with my campaign, the council of state, the presidential campaign. We're all in alignment and working together to get those door knocks done. And I just don't see it on the Republican side. And I hope it makes a difference.
I just want to report that we're now getting in early vote data from around the country. Democrats are overperforming our 2020 numbers, which is not something we all thought would happen for a variety of reasons. And so there is a lot of now both anecdotal stories and also now real data, that they don't have the same kind of field operation that we have. I mean, we sort of knew that from news accounts, but it's really starting to show up in the early data in the states where people are starting to vote in large numbers. It's an encouraging thing. I mean, our side is fired up. People are working hard. They've been working hard for years now. And as you know, Josh, your state, there was early investment there. I mean, my Hopium community was part of it. We've raised over $700,000 now for the North Carolina Democratic Party. And I feel like, everywhere in the battleground, we are going to have the biggest and most powerful grassroots army that we've ever had. And on their side, they just didn't make the same kind of investments. And this stuff is really going to matter in these closing days of the election. So it's encouraging to hear, because that's what we're seeing in other places as well.
That's great. Happy to hear that.
Well, listen, thank you. We know how busy you are. Hopefully you'll have time to walk your dogs this morning.
They want me
And listen, good luck. I mean, we're really proud of you, and just good luck to the people of North Carolina. You guys have suffered so much, and it was so unexpected, and the scale of the devastation was so beyond anything that anybody could have imagined. And so, our hearts are with you, and we'll be working hard to make sure that legislation gets passed too, Josh, when it's time, assuming that, particularly if we win the House and the Senate, it's going to be a lot easier to get done. But we wish you good luck, and, congratulations on the progress you've made so far, and bring it home.
Thanks, Sam. There. Y'all take care. Appreciate it.